As soldiers, they were taught to fight for honor, and as men, they were willing to die for it. In Pursuit of Honor was copyrighted in 1995. In Pursuit of Honor is the true meaning of loyalty and standing up for what you believe in. To understand how these soldiers made a long shot into reality, we will look behind the scenes into the characters and settings. Next, we will ride into the plot, and finally, we will look into the morals and lessons. In Pursuit of Honor is an action-packed film that was created with first-class characters and state-of-the-art settings for its time. The main characters include Don Johnson, Craig Schaefer, Gabriella Anwar, and Ron Steger. Don Johnson played Lieutenant Sergeant John Libby, who was a great soldier that stood up for what he believed in. Through loyalty, he kept the cavalry together as well as he could. He was forced to see his men, the horses, be killed and die throughout the entire film. Craig Schaefer was the role of Lieutenant Marshal Buxton. Lieutenant Buxton was a perfect soldier, except he hit a superior officer, and this sent his career to a small fort to be in charge of the horses of the cavalry. With this responsibility, he had the burden of many responsibilities that would follow. He had the burden as the youngest and the one in charge to keep the others going on their journey. Gabriella Anwar played the role of a daughter as Jessica Stewart. Miss Stewart was a reporter. She was the initial influence in helping the 5 men on their long journey. As a girl, she was not respected like she should have, but this did not stop her. And last, but definitely not least, was Ron Steger. He had an influential role as Colonel Stewart. Colonel Stewart retired at the start of the film, but his inner Army life didn't stop him. Throughout the film, he was the driving force to help the renegades make it across the Canadian border. Along with these famous characters, there's an adventurous setting. The setting started out in a remote post in the American Southwest. This was where they kept the cavalry. Then the setting took us to the start of the long journey in Mexico, where the horses were to be slaughtered, and ended up in beautiful country, Montana, next to the Canadian border. These characters and setting is what made the plot of this movie possible. The plot of this story takes us from Mexico all the way to the Canadian border. It all starts with what these soldiers were taught at day 1, cavalry rules. These include loyalty to fellow soldiers and loyalty to horses and their loyalty to us. The loyalty to fellow soldiers was shown when the movie starts with a flashback to 1932 when the veterans were camping at the White House. They were waiting for their bonuses that was rightfully theirs, but the U.S. brought in men and cavalry. The leader of the cavalry gave the forward command to move these veterans back. A few of the men in the cavalry had fought with these men and decided to disobey orders. They were sent to the remote camp in the Southwest America. 2 years later, the military is downsizing. They start with getting rid of the horses by driving them to Mexico and putting them in a pit. With 100 horses in the pit, they begin to fire upon them, mowing them down, and as the men see their fellow soldiers die, the same ones that fight next to them, they decided to take the remaining 400 horses to the Canadian border. On their ride to the border, they continuously try to avoid the U.S. Army, who is willing to shoot to stop. The men lose many horses by having to put them down due to injuries. When they were almost to the border, one of the men was shot in the back by the Army, and the last 4 decided to make a last-ditch effort. With the Army on their tails, they used an old cavalry trick. The blowing of a bugle horn was used to retain your horse if you were separated in war. As one man leads, he begins to blow in the bugle. The horses follow and walk, and then run as they cross the vast fields. Rockets are being shot over their head. The interesting thing was that the man in charge of shooting the rockets never misses. But somehow he shot long and wide. Even though the ride to the Canadian border was costly, the lessons and morals learned made it worthwhile. The lessons and moral learned in this movie are what make it the bone-chilling movie it is. When I first saw this movie, I couldn't wait to see it again. It happened 7 years later. As I seen it, I understood just how hard of decisions these men had. I then understood 2 morals they had: loyalty and standing up for what you believe in. Loyalty in this movie means never leave a man behind and never put your life before anything else. Another lesson learned was standing up for what you believe in. This is taking charge of the situation and never giving up. If these men would have given up, they would have faced court-martial, and the horses would have been slaughtered. But luckily, they faced the journey through loyalty and standing up for what they believed in. Sergeant John Libby stood up for what he believed in, and from the beginning till the end, All men didn't fall just because they were pressured into quitting. It was this courage that made it possible for the lives of those horses to be saved. When you believe in something, don't give up. Just remember, always stay loyal to your beliefs.